It's time to have another conversation on a possible free agent for the Toronto Blue Jays.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As always, I'm Braden Iwasko. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5 Iwasko. Carter First, too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. And as some of you may already know, we've made YouTube sort of the hub here. So you get shorts, live streams, videos, podcasts, all under the same sort of umbrella. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really does help us out. And you get all that stuff for free. So you might as well. If you're listening anywhere else, make sure you go over and hit that sub button anyway. Supports us. And you'll get notified anytime we go live if you hit that little bell icon as well. We have the Discord link down in the description. If you guys want to join that, you can talk Blue Jays with us sort of whenever you want. Lots to get into today. Sort of speed ran that intro a little bit, but we got some stuff to get into. A lot of you guys have brought up Ha Seong Kim to us. When I bring up the fact that I don't mind the Gleyber Torres free agency acquisition if the Blue Jays were looking for that. But then we got a lot of pushback. A lot of you said Ha Seong Kim's a better option. Why don't we go Ha Seong Kim? And we'll get into all of that. You know, how Carter feels, how I feel, comparisons, contract, everything under the sun. And then there was a bunch of, well, I don't want to say a bunch. There's a few MLB signings, so we'll break those down for you as well. Let you guys know who went where and sort of all the news throughout the league as well. Carter, let's start off on Ha Seong Kim. I maybe don't give me your complete opinion right now, but to start it off, what do you think of Ha Seong Kim as a player?
Ha Seong Kim just seems like a Toronto Blue Jays signing. Based off 2024 and 2023, it would make a ton of sense if Ross Atkins really was in on Ha Seong Kim, because what's he advertised as? He's a guy that doesn't strike out a lot, has very good contact rates, play pretty much anywhere in the infield. It's a very good defender, limited power bat. Again, he did 17 home runs in 2023, but you wouldn't say Ha Seong Kim is definitely advertised as a power bat. He can hit home runs, but is he going to eclipse 20 home runs? I don't think he gets there in 2025. So in that sense, it makes a lot of sense for the Toronto Blue Jays. Seems like Ross Atkins would be in on this guy. Kind of reminds me a little bit of a guy like IKF. Obviously, you get better speed. You get a little bit higher of an upside than IKF. But if you don't know a lot about Ha Seong Kim, I would start off by saying IKF would be a decent comparison, at least for the play style of him. But Ha Seong Kim, overall, just better player with the Padres. Obviously, declined that option, $8 million. So I would not be surprised if this name is floating around as we get farther into free agency.
Yeah, and I understand the people that are, saying to us, why not Ha Seong Kim over Gleyber Torres? And I think you're right. This fits perfectly into the Blue Jays mold that is their free agencies. But at the end of the day, when I look at him, you brought up IKF, and before the show, you said, he reminds me of one guy. And I said, IKF? And you said, yep, that's nail on the head. Because absolutely, they sort of have the same play style. Yes, the ceiling for Ha Seong Kim is probably higher than with IKF. IKF's a little bit more inconsistent. I think you get the consistency with Ha Seong Kim, but is it the consistency that you want? I don't necessarily think so. I think you're looking to bring in pieces that can drive in runs. I don't necessarily think that Ha Seong Kim is that piece for us. I think, again, when I go over his stats, and this is from Baseball Savant, Carter, his average exit velocity, 25th percentile. His barrel percentage, 18th percentile. His hard hit percentage, 23rd percentile. So all of those are not where you want them to be. And yes, his sweet spot percentage is 77th percentile, which is really good. His chase rate is 98th percentile. He really knows the zone, and it's good to see. His whiff rate, 92%. He's a contact guy. You know what you're going to get with him. Same with his walk percentage, or his strikeout percentage, 81 percentile. His walk percentage, 96 percentile. So he's a guy that knows the zone really good, knows how to utilize his bat, knows how to put the bat on the ball and which pitches to swing at, which is a very good thing. But does it fit where this Toronto Blue Jays team is trying to go, at least in our heads, maybe in Ross Atkins' head? This is the perfect signing. But for me and you, Carter, I feel like this guy is exactly sort of, I don't know, I feel like a little bit replaceable. I feel like you could throw Ernie Clement over there too, and he could have maybe not as high of an upside, but a fairly similar season. He doesn't have the speed of Ha Seong Kim, obviously, to steal the bags, but I think it would be a very comparable year. Same with Spencer Horwitz. I think that adds the more power in. Yes, not a good defender. Well aware of that. But at the same respect, if you're looking to get the bats involved, I think Spencer Horwitz and Ernie Clement are both better. I don't want to say better options, but they're cheap in-house options as is without having to go and blow a whole bunch of free agency money.
Yeah, you can definitely debate if Spencer Horwitz or Ha Seong Kim is the better option at the plate. If it's Ernie Clement or if it's Kim, you got to go Kim. I think
Yeah.
that's a fairly obvious one. The floor is just going to be better. Again, the upside is going to be better. Just going over some of Ha Seong Kim's stats. Did get injured at the end of 2024. Expected to make a full recovery from the shoulder surgery he undertook and is expected to be ready to go for 2025. So had 94 hits, 11 home runs, 47 RBIs. Had a slash line of he had 233 batting average with a 330 on base, 370 slugging percentage for an OPS of 700 on the dot. League average usually is about 710, so that was just under for Ha Seong Kim. 2023 was more of a typical Ha Seong Kim year. Had a little bit of a down year in 2024. So in 2023, hit 260 with a 351 on base, a 398 slugging for an OPS of 749. This is going to be a guy that's probably, again, going to be around a league average hitter. Sort of think Dalton Varsho in this sense. Again, not similar profiles, but around a league average hitter, going to play very good defense. Not quite up to the level of Dalton Varsho, but he's going to be around there. 38 bases stolen in 2023 is definitely something intriguing. We talked about on the podcast before how the Jays have a pretty high success rate of stealing bases, but don't do it often. You get Ha Seong Kim in this lineup, definitely has the ability to do that. But if we're looking for a middle of the order at bat, we're looking for that power bat, we're looking for home runs. We want a home run hitter. We want a guy that could change the function of a game, the way a game is going in one swing. Is Ha Seong Kim your guy to do that? Absolutely not. This would be a signing for me that if you get a guy like Santander, Bregman, Soto, these type, you need to want an A tier free agent. And this would be your B tier. If you get him as a second guy to come in, a third guy, definitely wouldn't be opposed to it. But if this is, again, it goes back to the Justin Turner, the IKF signing. If this is your major signing of the offseason, you're going to be very disappointed, unfortunately. He's going to give you good defense, but he's not going to change the game offensively. We've talked about defense all the time on this podcast. Again, a good defense is nice to have. But what's more fun baseball to watch? A team that's hitting home runs, hitting doubles, scoring a lot of runs, or a team that has good pitching, not even a good bullpen, just good starting pitching, plays good defense, and is going to lose baseball games 3-1. So it kind of seems like the same story and dance. And I think that's why a lot of people are going to steer away from being involved and happy about a Ha Seong Kim signing as the major signing of an offseason.
Yeah, definitely. And you brought up an interesting point when regarding stolen bases. And this is sort of where I'm at with this. Yes, he's a guy that can steal bases. He's a proven base stealer, which is fantastic. The problem is the Toronto Blue Jays don't steal bases. So why would that change? There are guys on this team that can steal, but they choose not to. So why bringing in a guy like this would change completely the mindset? I don't think so. I think he would have a lot less stolen bases because the opportunity may not be there as much with this Toronto Blue Jays team. I think the Padres were a different team that stole more bases. With the Blue Jays, I just don't see that being a realistic possibility. So I think that sort of limits his potential on that side of the game. And we've talked that he's a base stealer, quick on base guy. You want him to steal bases, but is he the best guy for this team? I go back again, Carter, and I got to say, no. I think there are in-house better options that can be utilized here. And I only brought up Ernie Clement and Spencer Horwitz. But also you have Will Wagner in there. You got guys like Elvis Martinez, and we have not seen what those two guys can do fully either. So maybe with time, maybe you throw Spencer Horwitz in there as a placeholder until maybe you see what you need to see from Will Wagner or Elvis Martinez. So I just don't know. And we'll get into his contract talk in the next segment, which sort of leading me to this point. I think there's money that could be spent elsewhere. And I think if you're going for guys like Santander and whoever it may be, then it has to be, okay, well, maybe we can't sign Ha Seong Kim, and is that a bad thing?
See, I like Ha Seong Kim as a player. I think the Toronto Blue Jays should be targeting this guy. My biggest thing is just this shouldn't be the biggest signing of the offseason. I think no matter what, if you have Kim over Wagner, you have him over Elvis Martinez, you have him over Ernie Clement, Spencer Horwitz. I think he's going to be way more consistent than those guys at the plate. He's shown that he can do it at the big league level. Had some injury troubles in 2024. And when we talk about a leadoff hitter, I think Ha Seong Kim could be this leadoff hitter for 2025. But like I said, if you get Ha Seong Kim, say he gets on base all the time and he's stealing second base, you're going to need somebody in that 4 or 5 spot that's going to need to drive him in. And it's going to become the same problem that we had in 2025 is that we can't string big innings together. There's not the big hit when you need it. You can't get the double. You can't get the home run. It's very hard in the MLB to hit 4 consecutive singles. It's a lot easier to just square up one baseball when you have players as good as they are and hit it out of the yard and actually score some runs. So I don't think this solves the overarching issue that the Toronto Blue Jays have. This would remind me of a very 2023 offseason, very 2024 offseason. We've seen how that goes. If you get Ha Seong Kim, like I said, Bregman, Santander, Jerkson Profar is another guy, Tyler O'Neill, any of these guys, if he's a supplementary piece on your team, I think no matter what, he's going to be better than a guy like Ernie Clement, like I said. And we'll go over the contract in the second segment. And that's another reason why I think this would be a good signing. I just think if it's like Ha Seong Kim or it's one of these other guys, I'd much rather go with the other guys and get a power bat rather than what we've kind of seen before in these last few seasons.
Okay, maybe you know what? Let's take a break. Let's get into the contract when we come back because I think that'll lead the conversation a little bit more. And I think we're a little bit on opposing sides of this, but we'll be right back. We're gonna take a short break, come back with a little bit of a debate. It sounds like.
Is sponsored by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off site-wide during the cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. With 5 generations of experience, Omaha Steaks consistently delivers the world's best steak experience. And their gifting experts have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide during the cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code MLB and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com with an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. Minimum purchase may apply.
So, Carter, getting into the contract talks with Ha Seong Kim, we might have some different numbers here. This is what I'm seeing as an average, I'll say. I found a 4-year, $49 million deal. And I found a few other ones. I'm sort of placing this at about a $12.25 million a season. Is that sort of what you have? Is very similar?
Yeah, I got from The Athletic. It'd be with a shoulder injury. It seemed like a lot of the Athletic reporters thought this would be a shorter term deal because Ha Seong Kim, maybe if he has that 2023 season again in 2024, is up more for that longer term deal. And again, it's free agency. Teams can overpay. We see Luis Severino. That didn't really expect that. So we'll get into that in the third segment. But I have between 10, 12 million. Say, we'll use your number. Say it's around 12 million. For me, if you can get Ha Seong Kim, even for 1 year, for 2 years, for $12 million, I don't think that's necessarily breaking the bank. Again, when you're in on a guy like Juan Soto, at this point, we're recording on Friday for our Monday episode. So maybe Juan Soto's already a Toronto Blue Jay. We're going to have to obviously see as the weekend transpires. We'll definitely would have went live. You guys would have known if Juan Soto's on the team by now, obviously with the reports and obviously our live stream. But if you get a guy like Ha Seong Kim for that, you could definitely go out and get a different player. You can get your Santander's and corner outfielder. You can get your Bregman. You can get starting pitching that the Toronto Blue Jays have been in, Corbin Burns, Max Fried, any of those bigger options. I think Ha Seong Kim, again, I love the player here. I think it would be a very good fit for the Blue Jays. The only thing, again, holding me back, and I've said it multiple times already, is just that it limits the power upside. And if it's your big signing, he's not going to be a game-changing player at the end of the day with the Jays. Or with
and I sort of agree with you. I think that if it's a complementary piece that is along with another signing or two, then I can understand that. But I think a $12 million price tag and then looking at, a possible other signing worth whatever you want to say, 25, 30 million, whatever it may be. I just think it puts the Blue Jays too close to that luxury tax. And we've had this conversation. We've had the debates with people in the comments as well. Why don't they go over the luxury tax? Will they go over the luxury tax? And we don't know either. but we're looking back over many seasons of them not or barely going over the luxury tax. Why would this change? I maybe Ross Atkins, like we've talked about, is trying to keep his job, and maybe he's willing to spend that, but it's hard to know. So right now we have to base everything on them not overly going over that luxury tax. So I just don't know if a $12 million contract, when you have a couple guys in house already that can somewhat do the same job. I will say I like Ha Seong Kim better than Ernie Clement as well. Spencer Horwitz, two different players. Really, it's hard to make that comparison. And then Will Wagner or Elvis Martinez, two other guys that we just aren't proven. Ha Seong Kim is proven. But I think that this money is better allocated elsewhere than, and I've said that all the time, honestly. Like even with going back to Gleyber Torres, I think there's that money can be better allocated than to maybe a second baseman, which is a position we've seen a lot of our bench guys and guys that were sort of filling in roles last year could slot into in sort of that platoon position for the season. So I'm not completely sold on the Ha Seong Kim decision. If it is within a deal with a couple other guys, then totally fine. I'm good with that. But I don't think him or Gleyber are an absolute necessity.
I think with these two, like any second base free agent, it really depends on how they're viewing guys like Will Wagner. We've heard from within the Toronto Blue Jays reports that they love Will Wagner. Blair and Barker have said on their podcast as well that multiple reports, multiple analysts, multiple personnel within the organization have loved Will Wagner. So it really depends on how they like Ernie Clement, how much they want to play Spencer Horwitz. Do they want to do this platoon thing again where they're not having an everyday player in there? Because Ha Seong Kim is an everyday player. He's going to be playing at third base every single day, or he's going to be playing at second base every single day. So we've kind of seen, again, how that platoon thing went. Not exactly the most concrete thing of all time. You never know what kind of production you're going to get out of there with multiple different players going in, going out, and then you're not giving, obviously, these players at bats. We've talked about how hard it is to settle into the MLB when you're only playing every third day, every second day, things like that. And we've talked about how good his defense is, but I just wanted to provide some numbers. So he spent most of the season at shortstop, made 11 errors, had a .974 fielding percentage. But again, when he can play second base, can play third base, that is definitely a huge thing for Blue Jays and company. The 24 plus 24 defensive runs saved as a player, as a shortstop, and then a 15 defensive runs saved as a second baseman. So there is no question that Ha Seong Kim is a good defender, but it just comes down to again how they value the guys within the organization. And what else? That's the biggest thing, is that this can't be your offseason move. This can't be your game-changing move. I would love to see him lead off over George Springer, obviously, but it's really an uncertainty, just guessing game what Ross Atkins is going to do at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think either one of us or other Jays fans, and let us know in the comments, but nobody wants to see George Springer hitting the leadoff spot next year, right? We're all in agreement here. Okay. So
yeah, it would have to be. There's no way. Like after what you saw George Springer be a bottom 5 hitter in all of baseball until July, where he had that little insanity stretch from in the middle of July and August, and then went back to regular George Springer. Like I almost rather have a guy like Leo Jimenez lead off, where he's just at least going to get hit by every single pitch of all time, at least get to first base, and unlike George Springer, who maybe again hopefully has a very good bounce back season. But overall, with this Ha Seong Kim stuff, I think the market with him, like a lot of teams are going to be in on this guy. Did you get Ha Seong Kim for $12 million? Not exactly sure. He declined his $8 million option from the Padres, so at minimum, probably going to get over that $18 million or $8 million. I believe he's with Scott Boras as well, so that obviously drives up the price tag as well. So it really just depends, I guess, what you can get him for, what else you do in free agency. Because as a player, I'm definitely not going to be opposed if Ross Atkins gets in on a guy like Ha Seong Kim. But let's talk. I don't want this to be the main thing of the offseason. Let's talk about a power bat that can change the game from the offensive standpoint for the Jays this upcoming season.
Yeah, and that's really what they should be keying in on here, right? We've seen guys within the organization have good stretches and good seasons, and then maybe they fall off. But if you can get one of those guys to have a good season and go and hit leadoff or get some base a ton, that's what you need from that leadoff spot. And you're not overly as worried about that, because you could flip-flop Bo. If Bo has the bounce back season, you could put him at 1. And I don't hate that. I know notoriously not the best leadoff hitter of all time. He's better in that 2-3 hole. But I think at the end of the day, guys are going to have to move around because George Springer really, really can't be there. And this team needs so much help for the power bat that I'm sort of putting the leadoff hitter to the back burner for now, right? When we get to this season and it's George Springer again, I'll be losing my mind on this podcast. And you guys will know because we did it all of last season. But at the end of the day, sorry, go ahead.
Well, what does a Kim signing also come with? It has to come with a trade for one of these middle infielders. When you have David Schneider, you have Addison Barger, you have Leo Jimenez, you have Will Wagner, you have, again, all these different players that can play an infield position. You sign Kim, you're pretty much saying, hey, he's going to be our second or third baseman for this season. When you have that many fringe MLB players in your system, like you're gonna have to move on from a couple of them. Whether it's for a bullpen piece, whether it's for that corner outfield, whether it's for a starting pitcher, no matter what it's for, you got to assume that there would be something in the works behind the scenes going on for one of these fringe MLB players if you do sign a guy like Kim. And again, when we talk about the prospect system, not a lot of prospects going to help these guys out. So are you going to get a huge player like Luis Robert Jr. back? Probably not. It would probably be another player, probably a little bit even worse than Ha Seong Kim, whether it'd probably be a middle bullpen arm that you would hope to bolster this bullpen with. Because you sign Kim, you got to assume you're signing another guy. And with all these bullpen arms, with all the money that you need to allocate, if you're getting a bunch of different players, you're signing 3+ players as free agency, you got to assume that you're going to trade for a bullpen arm that doesn't necessarily have the biggest price tag.
Yeah, and that's what it's going to be. I think we all understand what the trade piece would be there. Some of these guys don't carry a lot of weight right now, so it would be for that bullpen guy that you hope maybe is a diamond in the rough that you trade for. Maybe so, and you can't even say that it would be a guy like Eric Swanson because for the amount that we gave away to get Eric Swanson, it won't be that. It'll be one of those. Wow, we hope this guy can turn it around from last year, something like that. That's probably what the trade would be. And so at the end of the day, I mean, we could talk this to death about will they, won't they. I think we've put into a good perspective of how we feel, how he fits. I guess, Carter, to sum it up, I'm paraphrasing your words here. You don't want him to be the major signing, but if he's this BC here, it's not a bad option.
Yeah, I mean, he raises the floor at the end of the day, and he raises the upside that you can have on this team. But like you said, if you really needed them to, can Ernie Clement, can Orelvis Martinez, can Davis Schneider, can Spencer Horwitz jump into this second base role and do at least similarly what Ha Seong Kim's doing? Probably, if it's Ha Seong Kim, or again, you're spending that money on Kim and you're not going to be in on a bigger free agent guy. I'm going to say scrap Kim and obviously go for the bigger free agent. So it's kind of sounding like we don't like Ha Seong Kim, but we definitely do. It's just, again, he's not a game changer that this Blue Jays team so desperately needs.
Yeah, and I think it's more of a fit thing. How does he fit within the mold of this team, of this franchise moving forward for the next few years? Is he is he going to push the envelope when it comes to re-signing Vlad and Bo? Probably not, right? And at the end of the day, you almost need that right now. I think to guarantee that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. stays, you need to equip him with pieces to surround himself and protect himself within the lineup. And I just, like Carter said, Ha Seong Kim's not that guy. Good player. I have nothing against him. I've loved what he's done throughout his career so far. But I think it's just a fit thing more so. But if you guys disagree, make sure you leave us a comment down below. We got some MLB signings to get into because there was one in particular, Carter, that I was quite shocked about, especially from the team that he got signed by. We'll get into that right after this short break. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You guys all know I talk about FanDuel constantly. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. I always say it, those bonus bets, take advantage of that. That's easy money. That's free money. That's free money to play around with. You might as well. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So, Carter, some big signings going on within the MLB so far over the past day, 2 days. And I think we start with the biggest one. Severino gets a 3-year deal worth $67 million from the Oakland Athletics, the biggest signing in Oakland Athletics history. What is going on? I'm confused. A team that barely has a home right now just makes their biggest signing ever.
And for a guy that's middle of rotation guy at best, like he's definitely a very good MLB player. He's definitely not an ace though. That's again, when you're the Athletics, do you have to overpay to get some of these guys to come to your team? Probably. Like he's not going there to win a championship, obviously. That's a guy that Jays were in on too. Like Jays were in on middle. They're in on middle leverage arms. They're in on middle rotation arms. They're in on high rotation arms. They're in on a fifth starter. They're in on pretty much any sort of pitching. It seems like anywhere. It seems like the Jays are in on like almost every single player in free agency like ever right now, which is honestly a good thing. It's nice for us, obviously, for a lot to talk about. But how much, how much validity and how much are we actually carrying that the Jays are in on these guys? They're talking to all these different guys. They're not going to get everyone, obviously, with the Severino going. It's not the most ideal thing for the Jays of all time, but at that clip, what was it, $67 million over 3 seasons? That's a lot to pay for a guy that, again, isn't going to be the ace or probably even a number 2, at least on the Jays. On the Athletics, definitely a different story.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe he wants to take advantage of that, right? Be a number 1 guy. That could play into it too, but I'm sure the price tag doesn't hurt either. In talking about some more here, Carter, apparently, this is the report, Astros have offered Bregman a 6-year, $156 million contract. Or that was offered to him, I'm guessing, before. What his price tag is going to be now, again, we've talked about it. You guys can go check that podcast out if you've missed it. We've talked about how the fit would be, everything like that. So make sure you can go down to our playlist file. It's not too long ago. Make sure you check that out. We have a bunch on a bunch of guys from free agency. If you want to go check out how they would fit on the team, would it work, everything in between, they're all there. Just go back and take a look down our podcast list. Carter, the big one. I think the big one for Blue Jays fans anyway, right? Danny Jansen signs a 1-year, $8.5 million deal with the Tampa Bay Rays.
Staying in division once again. Went to the Red Sox, was on the Jays obviously before, and now is with the Tampa Bay Rays. If Danny Jansen is healthy for a full season, 8.5 is an absolute steal. But that is a massive if. When we talked to Danny Jansen on the Toronto Blue Jays, it was pretty much when's he going on the IL? Obviously, he's hitting home runs. The pull side home runs are awesome. But is this guy going to stay healthy? And he gets injured in the weirdest ways of all time. Again, we talked about when he was catching, just has his hand just available for the ball to get hit at an MLB player. Like, a little bit unlucky, obviously, but you can't have an injury like that for a catcher. It's definitely frustrating. The lower body injuries, upper body injuries doesn't really matter for Danny Jansen. Absolutely wishing him the best. Not going to obviously prey on his downfall whatsoever. Again, maybe slightly because he's with the Tampa Bay Rays. But a very Rays signing, just trying to take advantage of a guy that has some injury history and not trying to spend too much to break the bank.
Yeah, this is exactly a Rays signing that makes 100% sense to me. Because Danny Jansen, you're right. They take a lot of shots on guys to have almost bounce back years. And a lot of the time it works for them. I hate it. It absolutely boils my blood, but it works for them. And I could see that happening with Danny Jansen. Maybe they'll put some tape around the guy or bubble wrap him up and see what happens. Add a little extra padding to the catcher gear. Who knows? Yeah, I don't know. He'll be wearing 2 gloves at one point, probably.
I guess just sign us up for Danny Jansen being the greatest player of all time when he comes back to the Rogers Center and is playing the Blue Jays. First series, probably hitting 2 home runs. I'm just going to call it right now in the offseason.
Yeah, get your bets in on FanDuel, Carter, because it's probably going to happen.
Get my futures in right away. And in the prime month of December, getting my futures in for the first race series of the season.
Yeah, exactly. So that's Carter. I know there was a couple other ones. The Mets have agreed to a 3-year deal, $38 million with Clay Holmes. So that's an interesting one there for sure.
In the bullpen market too. So that's a guy that, again, linked to the Toronto Blue Jays. When you talk about a guy like Tanner Scott, you got to assume that he's going to get more than that 12-6, whatever technically comes down to $1 million per year. Probably going to be in that $14-15 million range, maybe even a little bit higher than that. So we talk about the Jays, the luxury tax. With how big they are in on Juan Soto, again, hopefully there is some Juan Soto news over this weekend, and you guys already know about the Soto stuff. But if they're not going to go over the luxury tax, it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to address this bullpen, especially when the market has been set by the New York Mets. Of course, the Mets as well, making all these signings early on.
Yeah, it's typical. I sort of said a bunch of signings started to come out, everything's starting to roll, and the Blue Jays haven't made a thing yet. Obviously, waiting for Soto. I think that's the big thing. They're waiting to see what happens. But then it comes back to the fact that, are you missing out on some guys because you're not willing to pull the trigger? Well, maybe that's a conversation for another day. Also, Guardians re-signed Shane Bieber to a 1-year deal as well. And besides that, Carter, that is all the news I have for signings. I guess in the past day and a half, it's been sort of a whirlwind, but a good whirlwind. I love free agency. I love knowing where guys are going to go and seeing where the cards fall. So
Yeah, I wish MLB free agency was more like even the NHL or the NFL, where you get like the first day of free agency and you get 10, 15 major signings to a bunch of different teams. It's always fun to see how quickly those leagues can change. Whereas the MLB, you usually don't get anything right away. You have to wait a month before you actually get some signings. That's why December usually is the big month in the MLB. Watching big names going to start coming off the board once Juan Soto does. Obviously, the Bregmans, the Santanders, the Profars, the O'Neills. Again, we've talked about them so many times on this podcast already. Just hopefully the Blue Jays can land even one of them, honestly, at this point. One or two of them would be ideal. We don't want to have another offseason like we have had previously, where 39-year-old Justin Turner is your major signing of the offseason, where Kevin Kiermaier is one of your major signings of the offseason. At this point, we don't really care who it is. Just make the Toronto Blue Jays better and make them more enjoyable to watch rather than how they were in 2024.
yeah, man. You know what? We'll see. We'll see how everything happens. Again, hopefully this is coming out post Juan Soto deal, and we're all celebrating, or we're all down in the dumps. But if anything happens on that Juan Soto stuff, we will have covered it. So there you go. Besides that, a lot more to come. We will, again, any big signings, anything like that, we will be live. We will have episodes out the next day. So make sure you guys pay attention for all of that. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Appreciate you guys always tuning in for the podcast. Besides that, we'll see you tomorrow.